The dim glow of the hotel's antique chandeliers flickered as Ryan and Emily entered the grand lobby of Hotel Armand, an old but luxurious retreat in the heart of Romania. It was their honeymoon, an arranged marriage set up by their families, and Ryan barely knew his wife before they tied the knot. Yet, something about her intrigued him. She was graceful, soft-spoken, and strangely distant. Her cold hands, the way she avoided mirrors, and her unsettlingly silent footsteps had already sent shivers down his spine. Their honeymoon suite on the 7th floor was lavish, with an old-world charm, but the eerie paintings on the wall and the unsettling stillness of the corridors made Ryan uneasy. That night, after a long day of sightseeing, they retired to their room. Ryan was exhausted, but Emily sat by the window, staring at the full moon. Eventually, he fell asleep. At exactly 2 a.m., Ryan woke up with a jolt. A strange chill had spread across the room. He turned to check on Emily, but she wasn't in bed. The bathroom was empty, and the door to the suite was slightly ajar. He rushed outside, but the hallway was silent and deserted. Confused and disturbed, he returned to bed, convincing himself he was overthinking. The next morning, while having breakfast in the dining area, Ryan overheard the staff whispering. Someone had been murdered the previous night. A man was found brutally mutilated in room 406. The news sent a shiver down his spine. He glanced at Emily, who sipped her tea without a flicker of emotion. That night, he kept a close eye on her. As the clock struck 2 a.m., he felt something shift. Emily, who had been fast asleep, suddenly sat up, stiff as a corpse. Her head jerked unnaturally to the side, and her eyes were wide open, yet lifeless. She climbed out of bed and walked toward the door, her movements unnatural. Ryan, frozen with fear, watched as she disappeared into the darkness. Summoning courage, he followed her, but she was gone. The hallway was empty. He checked every possible direction, but there was no trace of her. His heart pounded. How could she vanish into thin air? The next morning, another piece of terrifying news spread through the hotel. A woman in room 312 had been murdered. Panic gripped Ryan. He was certain now Emily was connected to these deaths. Determined to uncover the truth, he secretly informed the hotel security and requested them to check the CCTV footage. When they played the recordings, Ryan's breath hitched. Emily wasn't visible in any footage. It was as if she had never left the room. Yet, he had seen her with his own eyes. The hotel staff looked at him with suspicion, but he insisted on watching the hallway footage. Nothing. Ryan felt his sanity slipping. That night, he pretended to sleep but kept his phone ready to record. At 2 a.m., Emily rose again in that same unnatural way. She walked toward the door. Shaking with fear, Ryan followed. But as soon as she stepped outside, she vanished. Not walked away, vanished into thin air. He gasped, his phone trembling in his hands. He checked the footage. Nothing but an empty bed. Horrified, he decided to confront Emily. The next evening, he sat beside her, his heart hammering. "Where do you go at night?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily looked up, her gaze unreadable. "I don't go anywhere," she said softly. "Stop lying," Ryan snapped. "I see you leave every night, but the cameras show nothing. People are dying, Emily. What are you?" She sighed and looked at him with an unsettling calmness. "You don't trust me, do you?" Before he could respond, the room temperature dropped drastically. The lights flickered. A gust of icy wind burst through the windows. Suddenly, Emily's reflection in the mirror twisted. Her face darkened, her eyes hollow, her mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. Ryan stumbled backward, his breath catching in his throat. "Emily," he gasped. She took a slow step toward him. "You're afraid of me now, aren't you?" Ryan was trembling. "Who? What are you?" Emily sighed. "I was murdered in this hotel 5 years ago on my honeymoon," she whispered. "By my husband. He left my body to rot in the walls of room 406. Ryan's blood ran cold. Room 406. The room of the first murder. I was trapped here. I could never leave. But every night at 2 a.m. I wake up, searching for him. Every man I see, I test. I try to feel if it's him. And when it's not, I kill them. Ryan's body shook violently. Why did you marry me? Emily's expression softened. Because I thought you were him. The realization struck him like lightning. He had the same last name as the man who murdered Emily. That's why she had been drawn to him. But you're not him, Emily whispered, her eyes filled with sorrow. And that means I don't have to kill you. The room darkened. The walls seemed to close in. Emily's figure began to fade, her body disintegrating into wisps of shadow. Goodbye, Ryan, her voice echoed. And then, she was gone. The hotel staff found Ryan the next morning, unconscious on the floor. When he woke up, there was no trace of Emily. Their luggage, their booking, everything about their stay had been erased, as if Emily had never existed. Ryan left the hotel that very day, never speaking of his honeymoon again. But he knew, each night at 2 a.m. somewhere in that cursed hotel, Emily would still rise, still searching, still waiting for the man who never paid for his sins. But that wasn't the end. A year later, Ryan received a call. A new bride had disappeared from Hotel Armand, and the groom was found dead in room 406. Trembling, Ryan turned on the news. The CCTV footage was played on national television. The video showed a woman, her back facing the camera, walking down the dimly lit hallway. As she turned, Ryan felt his stomach drop. It was Emily. She looked directly into the camera, and this time, she was smiling. That night, as Ryan lay in bed, he heard a whisper right beside his ear. Did you really think you could escape me? Cold fingers brushed against his neck. The last thing Ryan saw was his reflection in the mirror. Emily standing behind him, her mouth stretching into an impossible, blood-curdling grin before everything went black.